Well, welcome, Richard. So we're on episode 2 of Office Hours, brought to you by Sapient Advisors. And we have our chief data strategist, Richard Vogel, also an ex-Moody's like ourselves. We're going to coin the term Moody's Mafia today, because once we work together once, we love to meet up in other iterations and work together again. So we're going to talk about data, and we'll get back to our basics as always, where we're talking about, starting with the problem, not the solution. We're starting about garbage in, garbage out, right? That's a old school saying we had for technology, and it applies as well to data and AI.
We welcome you today to Office Hours Episode 2.
Thanks very much. So everyone, my name is Richard Vogel. I have, in a nutshell, over a career, I've been involved in numerous investment bank functions and also consumer products and technology functions across many, many years. But I find for myself that I was a transformation agent throughout every single opportunity that I was given to my work career. And of course, this also includes the offshoring that has really happened over the last 25 years, which of course had to start with knowing what your processes were, what your functions were, and what was the outcome that you were trying to get. So I was recently asked, really, what's my sweet spot? Where do I like to focus? And I have to tell you, it's the entire process. Okay, it's the understanding the product and the information and services you're trying to get to the customer, but also what are the inputs that you need that are going to be transformed in some way to get to that product and service. I even go even deeper than that, where I want to know from a manual perspective how much time is put into that, how much time is put from an automated perspective, and then what are the dead zones that are actually happening across that governance from soup to nuts. But you can just imagine that if we're sourcing and getting data, what are we going to do with that data? How does it have to look? And we're putting AI not at the beginning of all of this, but more toward the customer focused end of things, because that's where the interaction is going to happen. So we need to enable AI to give the right information out to our customers. And, that's really every step of the process, including quality controls, where these need to have integrity. And we'll get into that trust option or that trust requirement later on in our discussion. But the idea that you just can't have bad data. And especially in financial analytics, where I was really more involved, it's that it's not just the number, but it's the interpretation of the financial number that's going to get out to the customer through any type of AI tool, AI function, any critical thinking encapsulation that's going to help your customers move on. So I just want to stop for a second and look at any questions from you guys, or where you would like to, move this discussion.
Sure. Richard, I think you and I have had a lot of discussions in the past, and Sandy relates to this as well, because we're always talking about it, is AI is the shiny thing that everyone's trying to chase, and people want to transform their organizations, but they need to step back. And should we be looking at doing that? When we're trying to do these big transformational changes, not chase the shiny thing, but take a step back and take a look at
Sure. So the one thing for everyone who's on this call, at any point, wherever you are in your industry or in your function, the idea is to sit back, get a coffee, and breathe. Okay, because AI is not going anywhere. It's going to keep moving forward in its development, but it isn't predictable where it's going to land, and it's always going to be transforming. So, I have so many statistics on what everything looks like, and I'll give you this type of thought process. Society has been in that FOMO area many, many times just in my lifetime alone. Whether it's in computer programming and law, investment banking, and social media, it's like everything keeps changing. You have private investment, public investment just being thrown at the transformation, without a consideration of what the end goal is or what the inputs are going to be. And because of this, we've had trillions of dollars in misallocated capital. AI is going to be no different in this. And so, let's level set here and say there are approximately 30 million software developers on the planet, and the 60% of functionality that's built by technology is not used. And we waste about $1 trillion annually in the spend for technology. And that's why I say step back, grab a coffee, and let's think this thing through. I just said AI has not settled. It's going to always be transforming, and we don't know where it's going to be. So for those of you who are sort of like on the front end of things and interacting with the customers, it's going to be, nobody cares that you're using AI. That's an expectation going forward. Everyone has access to the same models, APIs, and uses the same large language models in a way. And private investors aren't going to be here to fund your experiments. So don't lead with the tool, lead with the content. And that's where I think the value is going to be. So let's start to talk about the data itself. And so, Mary Beth, before I go into that, do you guys want to interject here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we see when we talk to people all the time, they're like, where do we start? How do we get a handle on this? I have to do AI. It's the fear of missing out. You have to start somewhere, but it all comes like the back to basics of looking at the problem, stepping through that, looking at where they want to go, and then mapping out that process, which I know you've done a ton of transformation in your career looking at that. But the foundation always comes back to that data, right? Like, how are we going to ingest the data, manage that data, clean it, organize it, normalize it, so that then it can be read by these machine learning models,
right,
and give us the right results, what we're looking for.
So, and that's why for everyone on the call, it's like you're looking at three people here who have experience on the product side, on the process side and the governance, and then on the origination of the data and how it needs to look going inside. And I actually have talked to a couple of our customers for Sapient Advisors where I have a few underlying beliefs in this. You have, say, two different types of companies using AI. There's the one that has a legacy database. They're an older company. They need to become faster and use AI, and that critical thinking as a tool has to be brought forward. And then you have people coming up with new types of products that are new data sets that either are where the data is provided by someone who's already gone through that investment of putting it together, or they have to figure out how to build it themselves. What you look at for me is that there's all this data. It's in many, many different formats. How do you get it? How do you understand how to put it into a golden library? The golden library, I say, is because you never want your database to become stale because you left some information you had access to on the cutting room floor. Okay, that's you have a source, you get the data, and you say, well, I only need this many data points. I can dump the rest. But business requirements change, regulations change, society changes. So if you have the ability to capture everything and put it into a common format that your AI can rely upon, then you have a better chance of having a database than you can monetize, that you can continue to use in perpetuity. And it's not something where, oh, you forgot something or you made a conscious decision to leave it behind. That's like the one main thing that I'm looking at, is that so many people decide to leave things behind. And in the last product that I worked on, we found that a regulation would change in a country around the world, and then we have to go back, find out how many institutions were affected by it, in other words, on the product side. And then you have to go back and invest operational resources into grabbing that data. And we're only going back 2 years. So that means that everything else before that, okay, is basically not as valuable as the data up front. So that's why I always say never leave anything on the cutting room floor. You know, it has to do with the archival abilities, but you can't do that. So I think it's that what I'm seeing is the mirror ball is shining, the glitter is thrown up in the air, and people don't look at data as being where they want to invest money. It doesn't give them the biggest return up front, right? But the thing is, the investment has to be made in order for your AI to really be valuable. If something is wrong, like we did find a technology that allows us not to leave anything on the cutting room floor, okay? And you're investing in making sure, say, numbers are correct or your unstructured data is interpreted correctly, but they're just not complete enough that the AI is going to make an accurate, decision or suggestion. And let's just touch on that for a base. Society, the way we see it in the marketplace, is all about AI, and then people are doing things that takes out the critical thinking of the human person and says AI is perfect. AI is the truth. And so if we want AI to be close to the truth, you have to have complete sets of data in order to do that. And you end up, when a company or an entrepreneur doesn't invest in the data, you can't guarantee that is really what's going to happen. At some point, your integrity is on the line about all of this.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. Like, just getting back to the early days, say, like the internet, we had a very similar issue where people weren't really sure how to trust, can I put my credit card into an e-commerce site? We're having a similar issue with trusting AI. It's like, on the one hand, you're using ChatGPT. What was it? 68% of your employees are using it, whether you have a policy against it or not. They already are. So they're trusting it, but they're verifying it. How do we get to that level where now we have secure, logins, we have the ability to put our credit cards, we have PayPal, all these trustworthy things? How do we get there with AI?
So I think there needs to be a sort of a culture of learning around this, is that you get used to saying AI is a tool that is there to augment what I, as a human being, have to do. And I think at our seasoned business experience, we say, wow, where did critical thinking go? And because of the way AI is being used, part of it is games, part of it is just a tool so I don't have to do any work, but we can't let it get to the point that AI does our critical thinking for us, because we're dumbing down our society if we're saying that AI is giving us information. And many of us have had the experience, just using some of the tools where we got out an answer and we're like, no, that's not right. I put into a specific AI tool, tell me how many hours there are between 2 p.m. today and 4 p.m. tomorrow. And they gave me an answer that eliminated the day change. And I put in with prompts the exact date and the exact times in a 24-hour session. And really, it was, it gave me the wrong answer. My critical thinking was, no, that's not the right answer. But people are using AI to get right through that and say, like, oh, it's only going to be this, this short amount of time.
What would be some really tactical ways for leaders to help their employees gain this trust? What would be some suggestions there?
First is, let's look at this. I saw an interview with Jamie Dimon, and specifically asked, what's the value you're putting in AI? And his point was where I'm at, which is you have to justify the return on investment for whatever you're putting into your AI tools and processes. And you also have to approach them with some level of critical thinking, like some, not New York sarcastic, but New York cynical, I'll say, where it's like, really? Just step back. Did that happen? And the one thing I did with anything I get from AI is like, tell me where you got that data from. Tell me what you're using for data. I'm actually asking AI tools, and then they show me what sources they used. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have used that source, and I wouldn't have used that source. So the thing is all about developing our critical thinking skills, the stuff we don't get from our educational system here. Our
Yeah.
educational system is, memory, rote, practice, test. It's not the summary and what did you get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's where I think
that 5 whys, right? You have to kind of ask a little deeper.
I would always ask deeper. Think about how many times you created a nested Excel spreadsheet, and at your end, your 5th sheet, which is all nested among all the other 4, you're like, whoa, where did that number come from? And you have to backtrack through your process to figure out where it figured this out and what number. And then all of a sudden you find that one cell somewhere had a 0 in it that it shouldn't have.
Right. We have a great summer intern program, and this summer we have guys from high school, guys from college, and the one thing we've been stressing to them is, if this is the Industrial Revolution, you need to learn how to ride the horse and drive the car. So you need to be able to ask those questions and know how to do it without ChatGPT or without whichever tool you want to deploy.
Isn't there, guys, here, I'm just weigh in here, I just think there's another piece here, right? There's the critical thinking, but isn't there, and I've seen it with us working with our interns, educating folks about the data sources and what's a good data source. And so people go out and value that. So they'll say, hey, Sandy and I were at a trade show earlier this year, and someone was showing us what their product was. And he was like, I can just get the data here, get it there. And us being in the data and information service industry, we're like, that's not all the full data. Do you have a license to do that? So how do you go and get people to understand that? And then large language models, really, it's just estimating the next word.
Well, and that's the thing. And I think, in a place where I must have talked to like 200 booths. It's one part of this is the entrepreneurs not knowing what the bigger players are doing, what data is being collected. We all worked for an institution that had 150 different data sources that they collected from around the world. And the thing is, those data sources are now saying, wait a minute, why am I selling people my data when I can put AI on top of it and create my own products? That's a really huge change to what the marketplace has been doing. That's a really big disruptor. And then you have entrepreneurs coming up with these, hey, I can fill, this data, I can do this data set, fill a gap in the marketplace. And I'm looking at them like, yeah, I already know who's got that data. You're not getting that data. You don't know that you're not getting that data ever. And probably that institution is actually building your product and you just don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have other people where their knowledge, and we've talked about this, is on the technology side, but they have no product experience, or they're on the product side and they have no technology experience. And you get to the point that my questions were to product people. So where are you getting your data from? Oh, I use artificial intelligence. Yeah, but where are you getting your data from? I'm using large language models. It's okay, I won't continue with that line of questioning. The line of question now is, so let me explain to you what you think you're going to do. Some of your data you're going to collect from customers, and other data you think you can scrape the internet to be able to provide through your large language model, through your AI, and provide to your customers. And then I walked away and said, yeah, that's not happening. It's just the internet overall has many sites and information that is factually incorrect, has areas where that information has been put through a filter of bias, or that information is, let's say it's about a piece of real estate. If someone wrote a negative review about that piece of real estate, and you can't validate whether or not that opinion had any factual basis to it. And so scraping the internet is almost, going to doom your product because, and it's your brand, your reputation, but you can't justify and you can't guarantee the integrity of the data. So that's where we get into buying versus doing it yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm. Also, if for whatever reason they scraped a private source that you don't have access to,
Right.
I would want to post a question here as well. So what would be like one of the indicators for a company that their data foundation is either not strong enough to support AI, or that there's some errors there that, where we need to get aligned on?
So when you look at the process of sourcing and normalizing, I say normalizing it into your taxonomy, it's looking at your sources saying, what data do I need to be able to make the product work? Skip the AI part for a second when you're thinking about this. It's like how that data has to run through a process of checks and balances and quality assurance before it gets to the product. Adding the AI in gives it the robust speed to be able to make interpretations about the data, but it has to be in a way that the AI is able to understand it. They need to speak the same language. And your data has to be made consistent. It's like every record of every property you might want to examine has to be presented to AI in the same way. Or if you have to teach the AI, if it's not presented in the same way, you have to make certain adjustments and maybe kick out that question. But really it is about that golden library that it's, put together, organized, and can be accessed by your AI agent.
I think you just hit on a really good point there, Richard, because the AI agents, right? They're going to be hitting these API endpoints to hit that data in the future, to create tasks, to automate things. So if that data isn't, a complete data set or, been managed the right way, that's going to have downstream effects. But probably also that agent is probably going to be pulling data from a number of sources. It could be from your product, it could be from proprietary internal sources. So those data sets have to also be able to be linked together, which is one of the things I always think about is like, how are we going to make sure that, yes, my data set's correct, but then the linkages are right and those relationships. And that's what really gives you the insights and analytics later from that data to make it.
So I'll give you the example of the last data set was on banking financials. Okay. We collected a lot of data from bank financials all around the world, very large taxonomy. And the technology we used took apart the source entirely. Not that our current taxonomy had to extract it, that they needed. They needed only their financial data, whether it was structured or unstructured, but there was a lot of data in the source. And so we processed that. Everything is great, automated, got the financial reports from an average of 9 hours manually down to 3.5. Everything was great. And then our manager at the time said, but I need the ownership data. And the ownership data was not data that was collected for the financials taxonomy. Okay. So the technology provider that we used, I think they took about a week. And now with AI, they could probably do less, but they took about a week to build a taxonomy just for ownership data. And then when they were able to look at all the extracted data, pull out what they needed, and I think it took them about an hour to do all the same banks that we were doing. And it was 100% correct. Okay. Because we had extracted everything. It was in a readable thing that the taxonomy could just like pull out of. So this would be like the AI looking at the financial taxonomy, the AI looking at the ownership taxonomy. It wouldn't matter. Like you could create new products, merging the two together if you wanted to.
And one of the keys to that probably was that you had linkages between the companies and the identifiers and the companies on that database, which starts to formulate your knowledge graph and your relationships, which is really what amplifies in these AI models. And, when you talk to people, it's hard for them to understand that, hey, bringing these all together and putting that investment in to do that is going to later on pay you dividends because, you don't see any front.
Right. But you see but that's the asset that they're building. And many people using AI see the product more as the revenue generator, but it has to be built on the asset, on the data, because here's the point that we had with our this product that we built. We built a framework for operations for exceptions management so that the machine could learn. But the machine, if there was ever a machine that would work better, we could take out the old one and put in something that was upgraded. Okay. And that's why I'm saying it's not about the AI itself. Like if a large language model or a way of doing large language models improved, okay, that's the plug and play part.
Yep,
right? Your
exactly.
database is not the plug and play part. It's the foundation on which everything you do rests.
How do you go? And I think one of the things that I think I've always, wondered how to get people to mind shift is how do you go and like get the organizations to see the data as a strategic asset? Because a lot of times what they do is they say, I want to bring in this AI solution, right? Whether it's an internal solution or they build a product, and then the data gets worked on, but it's not part of like the DNA in the firm. So how do we like shift that? That's something that I've been.
Yeah, I understand, and I think it's always going to be a challenge because you have the politics within organizations, you have investment, the P&L, the budgets, you have who's championing what tool, regardless if it's a good tool or not. It might not be the best tool out there, but when you identify the best tool, how can we get people to understand? And I think it is that in order to convince them, you have to explain beyond the product that they're trying to build.
The vision.
It's not just the vision has to go beyond today's product, but here's how you reduce your risk. Here's how you can expand the use of your database. Here are the other different products that you're able to use. Here's how you can expand existing products so that they're always current and valuable and that consumers will want to use them. Okay? Because if anything in that process goes stale, the product becomes, has less value and you don't get to charge as much for it.
I think you hit on a couple of good things there, which was like the outcomes, right? Like the de-risking, right? Your reputation, your revenues, your opportunities. And I also think you have to kind of lead them with a story. And then there's probably even ways where I think like Sandy has done where, you bring a group of people together, workshopping or a blueprint of where it is going to take you and make it more experiential so they can like touch it and feel it.
Well, they have to. And the thing is, and you hit on this, we're storytellers. Okay. So we have to be trusted storytellers and we have to show them these outcomes. We have to show how the process works, the governance. I think that for most of my career, because I go into detail on process, that I've actually, surprised senior leaders because I hadn't thought of that level of detail. Like they're not operating with all the information. They're not operating knowing the process itself or where the quality control points are. It's sort of like by approaching this from a governance over everything, including the AI, you are actually looking at this as like you're already being audited, right? And isn't it great to pass an audit, whether it's from the government or from internal?
Yeah. So Richard, I think a lot of the examples you gave are great if you are a humongous, billion-dollar financial services company. What are some practical steps a mid-sized company maybe doesn't have a huge budget for all of this to get started? Some practical,
Right. So the thing is that when they have a product, they need to see what data they have that's going to feed into it. They need to create their data library and they can do it in a very simple way. And I'm not saying that, I say leave things on the cutting room floor. That doesn't mean, that's easy enough to keep on the side. Okay. But they still need to think about how to either merge everything into a golden library, organize it, or that they have to be able to have, like, say, a separate section where you bring everything together. I'm not saying that there are tools out there that will help them do this. And they become better and better all the time using, even large language models. But we work with some of them already. Like, we've really tried. I mean, I did at least 7 proofs of concept, and I wouldn't say that the one we chose is, it itself is always morphing into the best. And you're right, mid-sized companies, it's like they need help beyond the staff that they have to understand how this is going to transform. Mid-sized companies, they need the control over what's happening, but they don't have necessarily the expertise to identify the pitfalls along the way. And I think the way we approach this is a very, not compact, but everything is in a container, that we know what the data has to do in order to get to the product itself. But I think they need expertise outside that they can let go later on.
I think there was something that you said there, though, just to double click on, is you talked about the data library. And I always think with a data library starts like your definitions, right, of the items. Yeah. And different parts of a firm can have different definitions for the same item.
Right.
And I think that starts to get people aligned a bit.
Right. Well, the thing is that if you train your machine that's going to build your data library, you can start to say that certain data points are referred to differently in different countries, in different industries, in different ways. Like you have to train your model a bit. The one that we worked on had, I believe it was 2,400 data points that had to be trained across 140 countries and in different languages. So I'll tell you, for us, because that is the most complex, it did take us a number of months to produce. Okay. But the thing is, there has to be some library and translation between all the different sources of data in order to get you to the point that your AI that you're not spending that time and money in having to train the AI, more so get your data in order. That you have to say to AI, if this is happening, think of it this way. Because then plug and play that one.
That totally makes sense. We have a question actually that somebody submitted, and it's how can companies innovate quickly with AI while ensuring data governance, compliance, and security aren't compromised? So I think, we can have Sandy and Richard kind of answer this, because Sandy, I think what you've seen with actually taking people through workshops and design sprints can help us, your AI clarity sprints, with doing that along with the data side. Maybe I'm going to hand it over to Sandy and then Richard.
Sure.
Sure. So I think there's this concept in many cases, right? Traditionally, the head of the company has written a check to technology, and that has made the advancements happen in technology. While AI is technology, it involves everyone needs a seat at the table. You need HR, you need legal, you need the sales team, as well as product and technology. And kind of getting everyone in alignment through what we're calling our AI strategy sprint. First of all, there are people who everyone's living their lives, working their full-time jobs. So to understand AI really at its core, what the capabilities are, we can take you through that in a way that kind of gets an even playing field for all the people involved, all the stakeholders, right? And then kind of help them uncover what their use cases would be internally, right? Beyond everyone is so giddy about saving headcount, but what are the efficiency plays? And then what can we pivot our skilled workers to next? What are the projects that you have that you were unable to tackle because you are trying to do something manually that now can be done with an agent? So we cover a lot of that in our workshops. And I don't know, Richard, if you want to tag on to that.
No, it's the fact that you said what you just said sort of leads us to the point about what jobs are enduring, because we've gotten to the point of, over the course of years, we've gotten to the point of, knowing what our processes are, then disconnecting those processes from the places that they're done, then to, moving them offshore. And now it seems AI is going after all the offshore jobs, plus all the critical thinking jobs, depending on where our guardrails are going to be when it comes to to AI and how we use it.
Well, on that note, what would you say are the enduring jobs then that
Sure.
require humans?
So when I was living in the Philippines and I was building one of these delivery centers, I came up with the thought, and I, of course, come back to the States and everyone's angry at me. But I said, American parents are the worst people to tell their kids what they should be studying and what they should be doing because of the computer programming and investment banking and everything we went through over decades. I say that people should either do careers or jobs where they intend to be the best in the world at whatever they're doing, or they have to take a position where you have to touch somebody. It's all about the human connection at this point, because if a job or function can be done electronically and moved somewhere in the world, it will always go to the lowest cost area. But I think that AI is taking those jobs right away, because we said the simple transactional jobs are the ones that are moving offshore. So now it's going to be, wait, we can do that with AI and get the result in like a minute or so. So it is about the human connection. And if someone is studying something right now where their accounting degree and their focus can be done in a low-cost area of the world, there are hundreds of millions of people in many different countries who are speaking English to some degree, and they are able to do that type of work. Okay, so and even those countries have even gotten more complex. The article, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, where they talk about India BPOs are, either behind the times, or they are all, doing programming to a degree that they're trying to keep their jobs, but they still won't keep the volume of people working at those positions. And so that's why it has to be about the human connection here. The value add has to be in front of the person that's doing the consumer.
What about with the person touching the consumer, some of those people are real experts. So I kind of think about AI does, you can extract data, you can summarize content, right? You can do research. But then when you take all the different pieces of information together, it takes that expert or person working with the client to synthesize it, right? That I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, no. So here's where I see the big challenge for us as a society, and they're not just us. It's all Western societies that have maybe more complex economic functions, where we are eliminating our first and second steps of any job that would happen. The young people that would get trained on something. I remember at Legal Tech that there were law students that came there, and they were complaining to the BPOs that did legal work that they were taking their jobs because that was their stepping stone within the legal field to get experience. We are losing that, and we haven't solved for that yet. Okay, and that's where AI, we have to work that out as a society, because if the McKinsey consultant, and I'm going to say the real consultant, okay, who's had 10 years of experience, once they reach a certain plateau in their career, where does the next one come from if you don't have areas for them to practice, to start and to move on? That's where I think the guardrails have to be on what are we using AI for? Is it to replace the critical thinking of people, or is it just a tool or a source of information that has digested large libraries of information? Okay, and that's where I feel the data set comes into, that we trust the data that we're using to be a tool to help people move forward. But it is going to be the challenge, okay?
One other thing I just want to, we're almost at a quarter to the hour, but we're also just want to give it a shout to the audience who's been listening, and we've been taking some questions there. And we just wanted to see if anyone had any additional questions. To please feel free and type them into the comments of the LinkedIn Live. And Christine, who's been moderating that, will pick up your question and send it over to us to answer. But we'll, continue to, on.
Yep.
But in the meantime, you can send any questions you have.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys saw this, and I don't know where this was produce. But apparently McKinsey let go 5,000 consultants and replaced them with 12,000 AI agents. Even if that's not true, which of course I'm the person saying, really? Because I really have to go into the source of that. But it's like, that's what's coming toward us. That's what every company is going to be, really looking at.
Yeah.
I think what it comes down to too is, though, it's the business models too that are going to be challenged, right? So we'll look at some consulting firms, or even, legal's another one that's going through it right now. They're going to have to reevaluate the business model. So, some of that I think is probably coming from the clients or whatnot from it, but that kind of thing. So I just think that's going to be very interesting as that dynamic rolls out.
Yeah, I agree. I think legal industry is in trouble. Paralegals are in trouble. And I would say, from my observations, and I know this is probably against what everyone's thinking, I think creativity is the hardest thing to replace.
Right.
I think there's going to be an influx of fast apps. Everybody's on Lovable, cranking out their code. If it all looks like material UI and doesn't look like anything interesting, I think your brand is going to be more important. Your creativity, your hook, your way to get them. I mean, your enduring job is literally going to be, you're an influencer. You are, I don't know, maybe a therapist, maybe a nurse or something. Like, there's really, like you're saying, the real hands-on jobs are going to be very critical, but even those will have AI.
Well, sure. I think what you're saying there, Sandy, though, is with the creativity, though, something like a Lovable or some of these things, these AI prototypes, they all look the same, right? So large language models look at a pattern. But if you have creativity and you work on your prototype yourself, right, things like that, you're going to come up with something different than everybody else. So you're just going to end up with the same app if you go down that. People think they can just go build it in that, and that's going to become my product.
Right.
And that has filled up all my reels, where everyone's saying, oh, we have all of these AI apps. They're worth $999, but we'll give them to you for $27. It's like, really? I have to look at this and critical thinking, like, what is that? Or the colleges and universities who are saying, we can give you a master's in AI. And I was like, by the time someone spends thousands of dollars on this, the AI will have changed.
Right.
That and the business models, depending on the use case, the industry will have evolved by the time anyone trains for them. And that's where I'm like, if those companies or those industries start saying, oh, we don't need these people anymore, then how do they train up the mid-level with the critical thinking skills?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then that creativity comes there, not just even in building the solution, but I earlier, even synthesizing information as an expert, right? There is a creative art and a science to law, even to financial services, things like that. And that's going to kind of get lost. But, we have a little bit more time left, but we have a series of questions that we'd like to go through with our guests before we wrap up. Sandy, I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Sure. I would say we have always asked this question. What are your favorite resources out there? So are you listening to podcasts? Are you reading books, articles?
Yeah, I have to tell you, because I'm a New Yorker, and because I was in investment banking, I was always being hit with information all the time. And I would read every single magazine, newspaper that was in the New York area. Now, why am I reading Crane's Business in New York or Advertising Week or anything? That's not my focus, but I always did that. I'm at the point in my life where I'm more selective. So I don't read necessarily the papers. I follow people, and I follow people who have failed and that transformed themselves and rebuilt themselves, because that shows a tenacity that I truly respect. And I shared this with Beth earlier. It's like, I actually listened to Kevin O'Leary, not because he's always right, in my opinion, but because of the way he delivers factual information. And then I tried to figure out how, using his critical thinking, how he reached the answer or the outcome that he did. I've watched and read Andrew Sullivan for decades now, who has gone through an amazing transformation in his own area. And then I do listen to Jamie Dimon. He actually is one of the reasons that I was let go from JP Morgan. So I hold no grudges, but I knew that when I was severed, I knew why. And, just basically people who have lived through the transformation, but I don't follow the hysterics. And I do have two main, say, guilty pleasures. I listen to Kennedy, who is very much a libertarian on various channels, and Slim Sherry, the comedian who's on the Gen X comedy tour, because it speaks to me greatly as being part of my life. Now, for anyone in the AI world, the book that I will get and I will read is Agentic AI, Rakesh Gohel, because the summary alone has me really interested in finding out where this group of writers was really pushing things. And I do also listen to Mo Gawdat, who was with Google. He does scare me at times, but I need to know what people are thinking. So I am very interested in other points of view.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it's always good to have the various points of view, and you can kind of bring that into your thinking and what you're following.
Yeah, Mary Beth, I think it was maybe about a month ago, you shared, there was a podcast that Rick Rubin was on where he talks about creativity. I just wanted to mention it here because we talked about that earlier. I can't remember what it's called, but if you Google it, the latest Rick Rubin podcast where he talks about AI and creativity, and he's first of all, he's phenomenal, but second, he is also very funny. He wrote a book that's called the Brief History of Vibe Coding. He became the meme for vibe coding, so that one's definitely worth checking out because he talks about how we should embrace AI as creatives as part of our process.
Yeah, I think he was on, which is the podcast that I actually follow a lot, is AZ16 by Andreessen and Horowitz, the VC firm, probably the number one, venture firm in AI. So he was on one of their shows there, and I think that's where we can always drop it later in the comments section. But yeah. So Richard, we have a couple more questions here for you about. So one of them is, what advice would you say that you would give to the audience?
So around data, I think that we've talked a lot about it and the need to having good data because it is about trust. I mean, at this point, I would guarantee that everyone on this call, even us, when we see videos, when we see newspapers, I think that we're looking at them going like, is this true? Is this right? And for us to have to question this, it's just more time, more effort to try to get the information that we're really looking for in order to make decisions correctly in our own life. I saw this write-up where it was like, AI is not making us smarter, it's that we're letting AI replace our critical thinking. And so for everyone on this office hours, don't let AI replace critical thinking. Okay. It will, if it doesn't bite you the first time, it will bite you another time. I mean, where you could be in front of money or someone with money or someone who's making a decision about your life, and you don't want that data to be incorrect. That's going to manipulate the decision.
Would there ever be a situation where you would not use AI at this point, where you would just go more in a traditional collect data sets and?
Okay, I'll share this with you guys. Okay, I have used ChatGPT. I ran a couple documents through ChatGPT, and it made no changes. It's like I was like, come on, do something. You know what it did? It reduced some places where I had double spaces after a period. Because that's not the way to write anymore. But right. I'm like, what words? Wait, you're supposed to make this better. And I did use the prompts. So then I had to start saying, make this document sound like Jamie Dimon said it. Make this document sound like this person said it, as the only way to get a change. Because if I said, make it sound like an executive or a consultant or someone of leadership said it, it wasn't changing my document.
Right. It made it look plain vanilla.
Yeah, it was it. And that's where I was disappointed. And I'm saying, well, what's the big deal? I mean, my hope with AI is in the healthcare field. Okay, the idea that the hospital systems are acquiring data about us, and they can anonymize it, I don't care, but that one hospital has a situation that another hospital already solved for, and through their databases and through AI, they can find a course of treatment that's going to help people in disparate places. That's where I have the AI hope. But as far as some products and services, if the data isn't really broken apart in a way that your AI can use it, I don't have hope for that unless they've invested in that first part.
I mean, I just am trying to reclaim the M dash. I don't like what ChatGPT has done. M dashes are valid. They want was created.
Someone coming from publishing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's very difficult. When I was at an investment bank, we had a whole style that we built up about the investment bank to make sure the brand was all aligned. And now I still talk like that investment bank because of all the things I did, and I was in that area of marketing services. That it was like we need to do it this way, so this is the way.
Yeah. I think we're getting towards time there, Mary Beth. Do we want to talk about?
Yeah, we are just. Before I do that, just one thing I just want to ask Richard is: do you have an ask for our audience? We always try to ask people. They haven't asked for our audience. We're trying to share with them, but then also
So for those for everyone in the audience, it's like, what is your concern about AI? And for some of the solutions or the anecdotes that I've given, what might be something you would have done differently with developing databases or looking at governance of a process? And in that process, what do you think is the most important part? I mean, you can agree with what we've said, and if you feel something else, let us know.
And also, Richard, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out after this?
They can absolutely reach out through my LinkedIn profile. I am watching it. LinkedIn has sort of turned into like another Facebook, which is driving me a bit insane, but they can reach out to me. And I don't post weird things in my LinkedIn, so that's fine.
And please, for the love of God, put on your 2-factor authentication.
I know.
Yes.
I will tell you. Oh, and so for a little side note, everyone, when you buy a car, they don't address all Bluetooth. I spent 3 hours with Verizon yesterday, and my phone still will not go hands-free with my car. There was a battle royale, and it's still ongoing. So I did not know that GMC did not support Samsung 25.
Well, all right. Well, thank you so much. I think for our next episode in September, we're going to have our friend Dave Merwin on. You want to talk about that, Mary Beth?
Sure. So we're super excited to have a good friend of ours. He'll be joining us on September 16th at 1 p.m. Dave Merwin. Actually, he is a extraordinary product strategist, design thinker, agile methodologies. He's really a true unicorn, as I call it, in technology. He can do product, he can program, he can design, and he started his own
facilitate. He does it all.
He does it all. And he started his own firm. He's a co-founder of a firm called Spark. And it is an AI innovation lab where they come in and they look at how AI can be built out for small businesses. And they run experiments, educate, implement end to end. And he's just doing fantastic work of taking people to the next level. And Christine is actually going to be dropping in our comment section the link to the next session. And we look forward to seeing you all next month. And thank you for joining us and taking your time out of your day. Have a great day. And we're going to be signing off.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.